Ballad of Johnny Arcane by Jim Nail, read by Jim Nail, Chapter 8, Part 4. Returned is the name of the chapter. Winter moved in swiftly, and with it, the traveling musicians returned to the village of King Corn. It was the morning of the first snow cornmeal pancake breakfast, and almost all the townsfolk gathered in the long hall of the log house. Stacks of pancakes piled on platters floated about the room like pipe smoke, and the sweet, slightly burnt aroma of birch and maple syrup permeated the air. Suddenly, the big door flew open with a flurry of snowflakes, and there they stood, the four of them, Aunt cradling the child Chestnut against her breast, Bear Claw leaning over them protectively, while Jocko, in a long wool coat, peered expectantly into the smoke-filled room. Shouts of joy, a wave of applause. People rose to their feet to welcome the travelers. But Aunt locked eyes with Johnny's immediately and pressed through the crowd until she reached him and threw her one free arm around him, rousing the sleeping child at her breast. "Oh, Johnny, we were so hoping you would be here." Bear Claw drew up behind her and shook his hand vigorously, his eyes clear and shining. Jocko, on the other hand, did not make it that far. He was brought down by a bevy of young women who smothered him with kisses and caresses. Plates of pancakes were produced. "Eat before dance," someone shouted. Bear Claw winked at Johnny. "Go get your turtle box," he urged. They wolfed down the pancakes and clambered up onto the long hall platform to tune their instruments. All except Jocko, of course, thumping his gut string and grinning like a long-eared donkey. The moment little Chestnut's bare feet touched the floor, she snatched up a tambourine and began pounding on it, belting out a wordless melody in a gravelly voice. Bear Claw strummed a rich minor chord. "Happy to meet, sorry to part," he called, and they were off. Johnny's joy was immediate, a warm beam of sun pouring into his heart. It was like the last 5 summers had never happened, and yet every memory contained in them still intact, not as a memory, more like a very old story, first learned in childhood and preserved through countless tellings. The melodies leapt from his fingers. The music was bracing and rapturous. Aunt and Bear Claw stood close together, their ears cocked, their fingers trading melodies, harmonies, counterpoint. Jocko threw his curly head back in the way that Johnny remembered so well, as if he were drawing the rhythm down from thunderbolts in the sky. And little Chestnut just beat her tambourine and sang with abandon, her voice remarkably in tune. Some people got up from their pancakes and danced. Others banged out the beat with spoons on their plates. Every now and then the door flew open and more people blew in, stamping off the snow from their boots and staring with delight at the scene that was unfolding. They played all morning. They played all the soybean variations and both versions of the humors of vellum. They played through Captain Baxter's entire collection of forbidden stovepipes, and then moved on to the winter waltzes and the summer strathspeys. But they made a mistake when they launched into the boatman's lullaby. It is, after all, a lullaby. And halfway through it, Aunt began to yawn, and Bear Claw started doubling over his guitar until his forehead nearly touched the frets. Chestnut had long since dropped the tambourine, and now was playing in the corner with a pile of knotted twine. Most of the townsfolk had left to attend to their labors. Bearclaw strummed one last chord and then looked up with a grin. "We are tired," he said. "It has been a long journey." "We'll get some sleep," said Aunt. "Let's meet here again tonight. We can play untuned." With a head full of fiddle tunes, Johnny made his way through the snow-drifted meadows back to Frankie Fulcrum's workshop, where he had spent every morning and afternoon since his return to King Corn. Frankie's workshop also served as his house, where he slept in a cot in the corner and hung his other set of clothes on a nail, but he took all his meals in the long hall and stayed there late in the evenings drinking beer and entertaining the scullery maids after every pot and pan had been scrubbed. Johnny stomped the snow off his shoes. Johnny stomped the snow off his shoes on the gravel path out of the meadow. He felt a lingering in his legs and a longing in his heart, sparked to life by the sweetness of the music. In the turning of the morning, everything had changed. For many days he had been swept up by Frankie's spell, the strange ideas that spewed from Frankie's mouth, and the wondrous phenomena Frankie could conjure up from the potions and contraptions overflowing the countertops and shelves and littering the floor. Frankie could elicit pure tones from iron rods and make shifting patterns dance on the surface of water by resonating the sound over deep-filled basins. He could make small objects rattle from across the room by changing the pitch of vibrating strings. "They're called wavelengths," he said. "Things you cannot see travel along wavelengths." On one occasion, Johnny had asked him about the machines that cluttered the room. How did Frankie make them? "I didn't make them," answered Frankie. "They are dolmens, as you would call them, just like so many other things. That's the problem with my work. It's all been done before me by others at a time before human memory. No time. All I have are these remnants, these clues, these dolmens. I send out scouts to places I can't go myself. They scour abandoned buildings, warehouses, especially the cellars. They dig through the trash heaps. Sometimes they bring me trash, sometimes treasures. My job is to sort it all out, to sift through the properties and potentials." A few days after that, Johnny mentioned the model of the cisterns Frankie had been commissioned to make by Burlyman. The model had been collecting dust in a corner since the day of his arrival. "Oh, there's no mystery to that," Frankie replied. "They're already doing it in Stubblefield. It has nothing to do with my purpose. You just build a tank on a hill and use the third attractor to bring it down to the people." Johnny shook off these memories as he stood on the porch of Frankie's house. From inside, he caught the familiar scent of burning sulfur. It brought back a trace of his childhood memories when Mother burned sulfur in the smokehouse to preserve the sliced peaches before drying them in the sun. He shoved open the door. Frankie looked up from the bench, his hair and clothes in their usual dishevelment. "Ah, Johnny," he said, "do you remember the night you first arrived? Do you remember the candles, what they did?" The flame jumped. "Watch this!" Frankie moved aside to reveal 2 candles on the counter, one burning, the other extinguished. 2 identical devices flanked them, short rods on low platforms with square paddles fastened to the tops. Johnny immediately remembered the attraction machine in the long hall the first night. he arrived. "Keep watching. Keep watching." Frankie did something to the base of one of the platforms. The flickering candle flame twisted and pulled like a dog on a tether, until suddenly it broke free and jumped across the space, landing with a splat on the wick of the other candle, where a whirl of smoke rose from its absence. "Damn!" Frankie slammed his palm on the counter. "Corn damn! It works! Watch this now." He touched the other platform. The flame, still swaying from its landing, curled in a ball and leapt again, riding the rising smoke back to its original wick. "Your turtleback! Get it out! Set it over there!" With some reluctance, Johnny pulled a mandolin from his back and set it on the counter. "There's more," Frankie intoned. "Hold still and listen." He turned the paddles down and positioned them outward, facing the room. He held a finger to his lips as he twisted the knob. There was a moment of silence, only the soft swish of snow falling outside. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to hum. The harmonies were familiar. Gradually it dawned on Johnny what it was. His mandolin was playing itself. It wasn't a strumming, just a mere vibration of the strings, as if they were being caressed by a gentle zephyr. A drone in perfect tune, resonant with every other sound in the room. The tuning was open, fiddle tuning, fourths and fifths and octaves, overtones hidden like distant voices, voices from the past and the unseen corners of the present and the invisible call of the future. "The attraction itself is a substance," said Frankie. Johnny struggled to make sense of these words. "Like sound. When Jocko plucks his catgut, it makes a sound. The sound travels through the air until it reaches you. Most sounds are made by something so close you don't notice the time it takes for it to get to your ears. But when lightning strikes, you have to wait to hear it. Or when you shout your name from a mountaintop, substances are moving all the time from place to place. Substances we can't see." "You mean like the dough?" said Johnny. The words just spewed from his mouth unbidden. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The dough. I knew this girl that said there was something called dough. You can't see it, but messages can travel through it. You can play with it. You can move it around. It helps to make you strong and happy." Frankie grew agitated. His hands began to tremble. "Where is this girl?" "I don't know where she is. She worked in a bathhouse a few days south of here." Frankie caught his breath. His eyes grew wide. The silence made Johnny uncomfortable, but he pushed on. "I stayed there," he continued. "We became close, but I left her because I was a sojourner, and I had to keep moving. I asked her to come with me, but she would not. She was afraid of the world outside of the bathhouse. She said, she told me she was a fugitive. Sometimes she comes to me in dreams. She says she's in peril. She's been taken away by someone. On my way back to King Corn, I stopped at the bathhouse. It was in ruins, abandoned. This grieves me." Frankie sat and thought for a while. Then he pulled himself back up on his crutches, hobbled across the room and back. "I know her. I was there once. She bathed me. Birdie Man was upset. He didn't want any of his people to go there. Johnny remembered something Lucy had told him. Once she bathed a man with one leg. His stomach felt like leather. Lately, when a piece of the puzzle fell into place, he could almost hear a sound in his head, a metallic clink, like a nail falling into a pile of nails. Lucy, he said. Yes, Lucy. And the man? Bow wow. Bow wow. He knows something. I could tell. We have to find them, Johnny. I think they can help us. Johnny took a deep breath. You said you could see something before you hear the sound, like lightning. You said your voice leaves your mouth and comes back to you in time. He halted his words. He couldn't find a connection between his thoughts and the present moment. It was something he had once expressed to Mother. If you can know something that happens far away, at the time it happens, can you change the way it happens? He said no more, and Frankie didn't seem to notice. They devised an experiment. It was mostly Frankie's idea. They assembled 10 clear glass beakers on the counter and filled them with different levels of water. Frankie moistened a finger and ran it around the rim of one of the beakers. His hand was trembling, but eventually he was able to elicit a clear, shining tone, like something Johnny had once heard a woman produce by drawing a fiddle bow across the edge of a carpenter's saw. It's a pure frequency, no overtones, said Frankie. A simple frequency will travel farther and faster than a complex one, especially if there's an attractor of the same wavelength. I'll show you what I mean. He placed 2 of the beakers side by side, then he used a pipette to adjust the water level until they were roughly equal. With his fingers, he sung the glass and adjusted the water until the 2 pitches meshed in unison. Something strange happened then. The song of the beakers continued and did not fade, and seemed like they would continue singing forever until he pinched the beaker walls and stopped the vibration. There, you see? Mutual attraction, frequencies passing between. Johnny, this girl, Lucy, do you love her? The words were so uncharacteristic. It was like somebody else was using Frankie's voice to speak. Frankie blushed, and he swiveled on his crutch. He coughed and cleared his throat. I need to look at everything, he said. I need to consider everything that might send out frequencies. Human emotions could send out frequencies. Johnny smiled. He could feel the answer in his heart. Yes, I love her. She comes to me in dreams. Frankie ignored this. He set about tuning the other beakers, the second set a whole tone above the first. His innate sense of pitch was surprisingly accurate. It wasn't long before he had 2 sets of 5 beakers, each tuned to the same pentatonic scale. He had Johnny carry one set to the window ledge across the room. Then he set his beakers to ringing while Johnny turned his ears to his own. Nothing happened. Set by set, they strummed pairs of beakers simultaneously and waited for the decay. As soon as their fingers left the glass, the sound began to fade. Frankie situated his paddles of attraction behind the counter beakers, hoping that its unidentified magic might ignite the process. But it did not. He became irritated. He tried other things. He refilled all the beakers with fresh water. He put a drop of soap in each beaker. They moved the beakers around, away from the windows, on the floor, on a shelf, in the wash basin. Nothing happened. No response. A sense of defeat crept in, and the shadows of evening pulled themselves like curtains around the wall. Frankie's stomach grumbled. He scratched his stubbly chin. "I'm hungry," he said. "Enough of this. Let's go see what Birdie Man sticks up for supper."